and gentlemen, it is time to invite our next speaker who's been making unconventional choices and resetting the trends. We have with us Mr. Prasun Nandy, Partner Data and Analytics, PwC India, to address on Renaissance as data, managing the data that is left behind when you die. Let's hear from him, the man himself. Let's have a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. And good afternoon to all the listeners and viewers who are watching this session. Well, this is a very interesting session. Rightly, Economic Times have given people like me a chance to speak on a topic which is very seldom discussed in your evening sessions or over a cup of tea. The session as it reads, it's Renaissance as data. What happens to your data that you're leaving behind? And in order to start that, I must try and get you people look back at what happens now, what really happens with your data now, and therefore it is very important for you to understand that when you pass away or when you leave this thing, what will happen to your data, who owns that data, how the data will be used or not used, etc., etc. And before that, let's look at typically our 21st century digital legacy, how it looks like. Now, it's very natural that today, if you look at us, how extensively we are using our mobile, our internet, our different applications. It's needless to say that we are leaving huge amount of digital footprints in the digital world. Now, when we die, we leave our social media behind. Our pictures, our memories, messages, whatever you have used for, and this is not just the Facebook, this is about every services that are using our data. You have Google, which is a repository of huge amount of data that we every day search for, like or dislike. Then you have LinkedIn, you have Twitter, and numerous number of apps like the e-commerce apps that we tend to use. And as we are using this, we are putting up our own searches, our likes, our dislikes. And when you go beyond the first part, there's a huge issue with our online banking in different parts of the world where there are emerging economies. There are a lot of personal data there, and people are willingly, giving it out without realizing what happens to the data down the road. Why this topic I felt is very, very important to discuss is because hardly anybody is talking about it, particularly talking about what happens to these data after we die. It affects everybody, but there have been no guidelines so far. Whatever companies or individuals are doing, they're doing in their own ways. Now, if we don't have a standard, there's no legal safety net, and it's like a wild waste, right? Just remembering a story, from a university student and a social activist who had been suffering from cancer. During his treatment, he was, he put up an effort for fundraising, and he was sharing his daily experience in Facebook. Obviously, after he died, his family and his friends wanted to publish all his Facebook statuses in a book, but were completely, struggling to do that, as Facebook had already memorialized his accounts and all of his statuses. And those data became completely inaccessible to his family members or friends. Now they had to fight a legal battle in the end to get back to it. So this only tells you that, one, we are leaving huge amount of footprints. We are quite unaware how the future of these data is going to look like, and very importantly, there's no guidance around the inheritance of that data. Now that brings us to our new topic. While we know what we are trying to get a view about what happens to the data, how it can be used or not used. That brings a very important question around, is data resurrection a boon or it's going to be a bane? Like, no one knows when we are going to die. And for that matter, what happens to our most intimate thoughts, dreams, and desires. But then there are some companies who have some very different ideas, like Microsoft. We know that Microsoft actually, got a grant of patent to create a conversational chatbot for a specific person using their social data. What it means that Microsoft can now use the images, the voice data, the social media posts, the text messages, written letters, emails from your email boxes, and create something called an avatar of you. Now, it sounds great technologically, but imagine, this situation where a person would be resurrected after his or her death in a way that the person would have never wanted it to be. So it's like, putting words into the mouth of a person who have not done or said something like that in his or her lifetime. But just because an AI platform, like say Replica, uh, resurrected something based on the data available, the person's character will be depicted accordingly. Well, that brings about this dilemma or this confusion or this debate whether data resurrection is a boon or it's a bane. Now, due to still very blurry ethical and legal boundaries in resurrecting one's data, companies like Microsoft aren't too open about what they will do with their breakthrough, through weird technology innovations. Obviously, it is still not very commercialized or have come to the industry forefront, but it remains a very important and interesting topic of research. That brings to another aspect of resurrection, which is the legality of the resurrection. While the terminally ill will ponder about the digital legacy, the majority of us do not. There are ample number of cases where terminally ill people want to resurrect, but then there are bodies, industry bodies, or the data protection bodies, the EU's general data protection regulation. They are actually discussing, debating, and currently prohibiting this to happen. And therefore, it is extremely important for us to understand that planning your digital death is not really about scheduling status updates for loved ones or building an AI avatar. In practice, it's a series of unglamorous decisions about deleting your Facebook, Twitter, or Netflix accounts, protecting your email against hackers, bestowing your music library to your friends, and so on and so forth. The list is this thing. Extremely important to understand that who is controlling the digital legacy of the dead. Let me take a few moments to talk about one case. This lady was laying on her deathbed uh, and hoping that uh, uh, you know hoping that she would meet some of our family members. Incidentally, her family members were not around her, so she was trying to contact them over these social media platforms. Obviously, from that perspective, she said something that got recorded, that was used after that, which is a good thing from the digital legacy perspective. But then there are other stories where uh, the person, as was found by the AI avatars from the data that they have left with, that have left behind, is not the same as the person himself or herself. In such cases, the question remains that who is going to control the digital legacy? Very interestingly, Facebook released this data point that by 2100 it will be like 4.9 billion users on Facebook who will be dead. It poses a question to us that what would be the ethics of rebooting the dead, and how would we actually go about thinking that the people who are leaving behind such enormous amount of data, whether at all we will do something about them or we will not. That brings to some bit of conclusion around life after death in the digital dimension. It seems unfair that dealing with someone's physical passing also means negotiating their digital death. There are no easy answers to it, right? So, should we leave our digital shelves alive forever? Should we close the accounts of the loved ones, effectively erasing them from existence? Or leave them up as memorials, places of condolence to be left, or people to be reminisced? What should and shouldn't family and loved ones be able to do when it comes to the data after death? Is it ethical? Sorry, is it ethical to you know is it really ethical that people will be recreated without their permission or against the wishes of the other friends and family? Even as individuals deal with such issues, business too must address them. As the policies are germinating with major social networks, the death of a user is simple. It's not a simple matter of removing an account or even leaving it dormant. Digital lives interact with the emotions of the physical ones, and for those left behind, there is no answer on what is or isn't acceptable online, just as there isn't anything offline. This means that for businesses involved with people, thought must go into how products, platforms, and services will interact with the users or the loved one of the users after the customer passes on or a product is turned off. Only by doing so with empathy and sensitivity will we find humanity within these ones or zeros. With this, I close my session. Thank you very much. Over to you, Prajakta.
Once again honored with your great presence. Thank you. It has been such an enriching and truly captivating session. Once again, can we have the huge round of applause for him? Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we'll be urging all of you to please visit and engage our book, post your experiences with us and tag us, with the hashtag using hashtag ATBTS on your social media handles. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before moving forward, they say that destination is very important and that is our single focus. But the real fun, it lies in the journey. And every journey has an ending. Organizations from all the quadrants of the world are wanting to accelerate information as much as possible. But have you wondered what should happen to the data that you leave behind after your death? It is time to take a look at our next speaker. So let's take a look together.